Okay, I'm in Nessus once again, and what I want to do is start a new scan, and I'm going to scan the virtual machines that we have, and there are a few of them out there, and I'm going to scan it from the Windows 8 host. And what I'm going to do first is give it a name, and I'm just going to call it VTC1, and I want it to go ahead and run now. And I'm going to do an external scan because as a hacker, that's probably the first thing I would do. We have to assume that we're not a trusted insider, that we don't have internal access to the network. So we're going to scan this from the outside. And you will get different information sometimes whether you scan from the outside or the inside. So I'm going to put 192.168.163. Let's say 135 again, through 150. So that covers all of the possible IP addresses that our VMs are on. So I'm going to go ahead and say run scan, and it's running. Tells me the scan was created, and it's going to run for a little while, and this can actually take some time. In the meantime, if you want to just click the running box here, it will tell you some of the hosts it's finding, and it'll also give you a list of the vulnerabilities it's detecting as well. If we click on vulnerabilities here, so far it's just giving us some information. Now what we could do is click on some of this. We can click on this info here, Microsoft Windows SMB service detection. Basically, it's told us that it's found the SMB service, and that's a file print sharing service used in Windows. So it tells us a little bit about it. It tells us the plugin that it used, the risk factor, and which hosts it found it on. So far that's nothing significant, and we can go back at any time and kind of watch the synopsis here. So we're going to let this run for a little while, and when it finishes, we'll come back to it and I'll show you what it found. We're back with Nessus, and it's been running for a little while. Let me show you some of the things it comes up with so far. First of all, it's identified 4 hosts, 141, 142, 143, and 138. And if we were to click on some of these hosts, we can see a few things. We know that 141 is probably a Windows box because it tells us a few things about Windows. SMB service detection, for example, SMB registry settings, and so forth. Now, it's come up with 2 medium vulnerabilities on this particular Windows box. If we click on those, you can see what vulnerabilities it came up with, and these are medium vulnerabilities. And the synopsis, it is possible to log on to the remote Windows host with a null session. Now, a null session can actually be done, some interesting things can be done with a null session when you're hacking a computer, a Windows box. And basically it tells you how to fix it. It also tells you what the plugin results were and the information there. Vulnerability information and the CVE information. And basically it tells you that it was possible to bind to the browser pipe on port 445. So we know this is a Windows box. If we go back, we can look at the other vulnerability, SMB signing disabled. And SMB obviously is the file and print sharing service, and it's not being signed. So it's telling you this is a medium vulnerability, but what you would use this for is to possibly execute a man-in-the-middle attack against the SMB server. So it doesn't think this is a really high vulnerability, and you would see a red vulnerability there if it did. And obviously this is possible over 445 of this particular box. And if we go back to one of the other boxes, we can see that 142 has issues well, and that's another Windows box, but SMB signing is disabled on that, and that's all. Now, obviously, we have some other informational things here. OS identification. We can identify the Ethernet card. We can identify that it's a virtual machine and so forth. So a lot of information we can get about the box. Some of it may be of some value just for information to put in our back pocket, but a lot of it is not going to be information that's helpful at first in hacking this box. We might find a vulnerability later that takes advantage of some of this information we got from the box, particularly the SMB signing. We go back to our hosts again. We have another host here, 143, and all we got was information off of it. And what it gave us is traceroute information. It detected that it's a virtual machine. It told us that there's some ICMP timestamp request disclosure. It's possible to determine the exact timestamp on the remote host. And that could be of some value later. Again, some of this information you can't use directly for an attack, but it may be helpful when you're waging an attack using another exploit. Knowing what the time is on the system box may help, for example, for a particular attack. Let's go back to our host, and there's another one here. and that is the 163.138. And it hasn't really told you anything except that Nessus could figure out what TCP ports are open. And the only port it's discovered so far is port 22, which is secure shell. It's possible this is a Linux box. And in fact, it's a CentOS box, to be honest with you. And the scan is still running, and it will take a little bit of time to run this and to get back all the vulnerabilities that exist on each box. So we're going to close this out for now, and we'll come back to this scan a little bit later in another session to see what we found. But this is basically just a demonstration of Nessus and how it's used to scan a network and get information from the different hosts. And in some cases, this could just be information. In some cases, it could be actual vulnerability type of information, like those medium vulnerabilities we saw on the Windows box.